I want to tell you what homeless actually means when you are 71 years old in California. Not the version that exists in the public imagination, which is a man on a corner with a cardboard sign and a shopping cart, and a story that began with a decision someone made that you can point to and say, there, that is where it went wrong. And the pointing makes the distance between you and the story feel safe and manageable. That version exists, and it is real, and the people in it are real, and they deserve better than the distance people keep from them. My version was different. My version was a 2003 Ford Econoline van, parked in a lot behind a strip mall in Bakersfield, California, that a property manager named Dennis allowed me to park in from Tuesday to Sunday in exchange for watching the lot on the nights when the businesses were closed, and reporting anything that needed reporting. On Mondays, I moved to a church parking lot 3 miles away that permitted overnight stays for people in vehicles, which is a category of homelessness that has its own name in the social services literature, vehicle residency, and that has the specific quality of being invisible in a way that a corner and a cardboard sign is not, because a man sleeping in a van looks like a man whose van is in a parking lot, which is a thing that requires no explanation, and the not requiring explanation and the isolation of it. I had a van. I had a sleeping bag that I had owned since a camping trip in 2004 that I had taken with my son Raymond, and that had been in the garage of the house I sold in 2019, and that I had kept, because keeping it seemed at the time like the kind of thing you did, and that turned out to be the most useful thing I owned. I had a small propane burner and a pot, and the specific cuisine of a man who eats what is cheap and easy and does not require refrigeration, which is rice and canned beans, and the occasional egg from a gas station, and the senior coffee at the McDonald's drive-thru that cost $1, and that the woman at the window, a young Guatemalan woman named Ana who worked the 6 a.m. shift, began to have ready when she saw the van coming without me needing to ask. I want to tell you about Ana, because Ana is part of the before, the human part of the before that does not appear in the category of vehicle residency, but that is the actual content of the experience. Every morning she had the coffee ready. Every morning she looked at me with the direct, uncomplicated look of a person who has decided that you are a person she is going to treat as a person regardless of the category you are in, or the vehicle you are driving, or the sleeping bag visible in the back. She said, "Good morning, Joe," every morning. That is the full extent of what she did. "Good morning, Joe," and the coffee ready. And I want to tell you that "Good morning, Joe," from a woman who did not have to say it, and who said it anyway, every morning for 4 months, was not a small thing. It was the thing that told me I was still visible, that I was still a person that another person was tracking and greeting, that I had not fully disappeared. I am telling you about Ana because what I found in Cebu is a city full of Anas, and I want you to understand that before I tell you anything else. My name is Joe. I am 73 now. I was 71 when the van, when the McDonald's, when Ana and the dollar coffee, and the parking lot behind the strip mall. I was 71, and I was in a van in Bakersfield, and I want to give you the full account of how I got there, before I give you the account of how I got out. I grew up in Fresno, the son of a man who picked crops for 20 years, and who then drove a forklift for 15, and who understood work as the thing that a person did in exchange for the right to continue, not as pleasure or identity, but as the price of admission to a life. I took this understanding and applied it to 36 years as a heavy equipment operator, construction sites across the Central Valley, the dams and the roads and the agricultural infrastructure of a part of California that produces food for the country, and that the country does not think about very much, except when the produce section of the grocery store has what it is supposed to have. 36 years of operating equipment in the specific physical way of a man who does this work in a hot valley for 36 years, which is to say with the accumulated damage that the heat and the vibration and the weight of the machines transmits to the body over time, whether the body consents to the transmission or not. My back, my shoulders. The specific damage that a career of operating heavy equipment deposits in a body with the patience of something that is in no hurry, because it has 36 years and the body is not going anywhere. I retired at 67. The union pension was real. It was not large, but it was real, and it arrived on the first of every month, with the reliability that is the one genuine gift of a union career, and that I had paid for with the 36 years and the back and the shoulders. $1,240 a month. Union pension and the Social Security that I had earned by existing in the American workforce since I was 19 and paying into the system with every paycheck in the specific act of faith that the system would still exist when I needed it and that it would have kept what I had put in. Combined, $1,760 a month. In Fresno in 2019. Before everything. I will tell you what everything was. I had a daughter from my first marriage, Cassandra, who was in Sacramento, and who I had a relationship with that was functional in the way of relationships that have been repaired after damage, but that carry the repair in them the way a bone carries a healed fracture, visible in the right light, stronger in some ways, never quite the same. I had Raymond, from my second marriage, the one who had been on the camping trip, who was in Phoenix, and who called reliably, and whose calls were the best calls, because Raymond and I had not done the damage that Cassandra and I had done, and the calling was clean, in a way that clean calling is clean. My second wife, Patricia, had died in 2016. A stroke. Raymond called me from the hospital and I drove from Fresno to Phoenix in 7 hours, because 7 hours was all the time between me and the information that she was gone, and I needed to close that distance as fast as I could, and I did, and she was gone when I got there. And the 7 hours did not matter, in the way that speed never matters when it cannot matter, and always matters when it can. I spent 2 years after Patricia in the Fresno apartment, doing what widowers of my generation do, which is to continue the motions of the life without the content that made the motions meaningful. To go to the grocery store and the gas station and the diner, where we used to go on Sunday mornings, and to perform the functions of a man who is maintaining a life while quietly understanding that the maintenance and the life are not the same thing. Then, in 2021, the apartment building was sold. I want to explain what happens to an apartment building in California when it is sold to a company whose business model is the conversion of affordable housing to market-rate housing. The explanation is simple. The rents go up, not in the month of the sale, gradually, in the legal increments that California rent control law permits in buildings of a certain age and type, which the building I lived in was, and which therefore permitted. $42 the first month, $60 the next. Then the offer. The offer that the new management made to every tenant over 65 in the building, which was a payment, a significant payment by the standards of people who were living on fixed incomes in a rent-controlled apartment in Fresno, in exchange for voluntarily vacating. The payment was $20,000. $20,000 is not enough to rent a different apartment in Fresno in 2021 for very long. The math on $20,000 against the rental market in Central California in 2021 produces a number of months of runway before the runway ends and you are in the parking lot behind the strip mall with a sleeping bag and a propane burner. $20,000 is a number designed to look like a solution while being a timeline to a different problem. I took it. I took it because I was 70 years old and my back had opinions about the packing of boxes, and because $20,000 looked, to a man who had not had $20,000 available at once in several years, like a meaningful amount of money, and because the company's alternative to the offer was a legal process that would have produced the same outcome on a longer timeline, with more stress and less money. And I had the specific exhaustion of a man who had been doing the maintenance without the content for 2 years, and who did not have the reserves for a prolonged legal fight. I took the money in August 2021. I moved into the van in October 2021 when the room I had rented with the money ran out, and when the next room, at the price that rooms were renting for in Fresno in late 2021, was not available at the rate my income could reach. The van was Raymond's idea, in the sense that Raymond had suggested I keep the van when I had considered selling it, because he said, "You never know," and the "you never know" turned out to be prophetic in the specific way of things, you never know, that you subsequently find out. I want to tell you about the 4 months in the van without making them either more dramatic or more manageable than they were. They were not dangerous in the way that homelessness is sometimes dangerous. I was an old man in a van in a parking lot, and I was invisible in the way that old men in vans in parking lots are invisible. And the invisibility was a form of safety, even as it was a form of erasure. I was not cold, because Bakersfield in the winter is not cold in the way that cold is actually dangerous. I was not hungry because the McDonald's senior coffee was $1, and the gas station eggs were $1.29, and the rice from the grocery store lasted, and I knew how to make it last, because my father had taught me that rice was the food that lasted, and the teaching had stayed. What I was disappearing. Not physically. I was physically present in the van every morning and every night, and in the lot behind the strip mall in the hours between. I was disappearing in the sense that the things that make a person visible to themselves and to others were one by one becoming unavailable. An address, gone. A kitchen, gone. A place to shower that was not the Planet Fitness whose $10 monthly membership I maintained, specifically because the shower was $10 a month, and the shower was the thing between me and the category of person that I could see I was becoming if the shower went. A place where anyone expected me to be. Gone. A reason for the day to be organized around something other than the maintaining of the minimum. Gone. I called Raymond every Sunday. I want to tell you about those calls because Raymond was the person who did the thing that saved my life. Not dramatically, in the quiet way that real things are done. He did not tell me to come to Phoenix. He had his own situation, his own family, a house that could accommodate me technically, and that accommodating me would have changed in ways neither of us could have fully predicted, and that Raymond had thought through, and that I had thought through, and that we had both, without discussing it, decided against. Not because he did not love me, because he did love me. And love sometimes means understanding the shape of the help that is actually available, rather than the help that looks the most obvious. What Raymond did was research. He researched for 3 weeks, and then he called on a Tuesday, not the Sunday call, a Tuesday call, which meant it was something he had decided not to wait for the Sunday to say. He said, "Dad, I've been looking at something, and I want to talk to you about it, and I need you to let me get through the whole thing before you say anything." I said okay. He talked for 25 minutes. He had the numbers. The Philippines, specifically Cebu City. The cost of living against my combined 1760. The exchange rate and what it meant for the math. The healthcare situation, which he had researched with particular attention because I was 71 and the back was a condition and the blood pressure medication was a monthly reality. The visa options, the SARV, the Special Resident Retirees Visa, which was available for people of my age, with my income, and which produced a legal long-term residency status. The specific neighborhoods in Cebu that the forums and the blogs of people in adjacent situations described as manageable and warm and sufficient. He had a spreadsheet. He had cross-referenced accounts. He had done the homework that I was in no condition to do from a parking lot in Bakersfield with a propane burner and $1 coffee. When he finished, he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Raymond, I don't have the money for the flight." He said, "I do." I said, "Raymond." He said, "Dad, let me do this. Let me do this one thing." There are moments in a life when the correct response to something a person offers you is to accept it without the performance of reluctance that pride requires. I had the performance available, and I chose not to perform it. I said, "Okay." He said, "Okay." He booked the flight the next day. He coordinated with Dennis, the property manager, who was a decent man who had allowed the parking arrangement with the specific decency of a person who does not explain the decency but simply provides it, to let me keep the van in the lot until I left so that I did not have to manage the van and the preparation simultaneously. He helped me sell the van to a man Raymond found through a Facebook marketplace listing, which produced $1,800 that I put in the account I had maintained with the minimum balance required to maintain it. He helped me with the documents the serve required, the health certificate, the clearances, the specific bureaucratic apparatus of a visa process that is designed to be navigable and that is navigable if someone helps you navigate it. I flew out of LAX in April. Raymond drove from Phoenix to take me to the airport, and I will not describe the goodbye at the departures curb, because it belongs to us and not to this story, except to say that it contained everything a goodbye between a father and a son contains. When the father is 71 and getting on a plane to the other side of the world, and both of them know the weight of that, and neither of them says the weight out loud, because saying it would make it heavier than the moment could hold. Raymond said, "Call me when you land." I said, "I'll call you when I land." He said, "Dad." I said, "I know." He said, "I know you know." I went through security. I landed in Cebu City 14 hours later. I want to tell you the honest account of the landing without the retrospective softening that comes from knowing how it turned out. The honest account is this. I was 71 years old and I had been living in a van in a parking lot for 4 months, and before that in a room that the money ran out of, and before that in an apartment that a company had paid me to leave. And I stepped off a plane in the Philippines in the specific condition of a man who has had the minimum maintained for long enough that the minimum is the only register he has been operating in, and that the restoration of anything above the minimum is a thing he has stopped being able to picture. The airport in Cebu was large. Cebu was not Dumaguete, not the small city in the hills, where the pace was immediately slower and the scale was immediately manageable. Cebu was a serious city. Population, density, the specific organized chaos of a Philippine urban center that had been trading and building and growing for 4 centuries. I stood in the arrivals hall with my 2 bags, the same bags that had been in the van, and I was aware of being a very specific kind of small in a very specific kind of large place. The man who met me was named Dodong. He had been arranged by the guest house and he held a sign, and he was 50-something, with the manner of someone who has been collecting disoriented foreigners from that airport for years, and who has developed, through repetition, a reliable and kindly method for it. He took 1 bag. I took the other. He said, in English that was careful and deliberate, "Welcome to Cebu, sir. How was the flight?" I said, "Long." He said, "Yes. From America it is always long. But you are here now." He said it as a simple statement of geography. You are here now. And I am going to tell you that those 4 words, said by a stranger who meant nothing more than their literal content, landed in me as something more than their literal content. You are here now, not in the van, not in the parking lot, not at the McDonald's drive-thru with the $1 coffee. Here now. Dodong drove me through Cebu City to the guest house, and I looked out the window the way I had not looked out a window in 4 months, with the attention of a person who is arriving somewhere rather than simply occupying a location. The city moved past, the jeepneys and the motorcycles, and the specific texture of a city that had been building itself for a very long time, and that showed the layers of the building in the way that old cities show them, the old and the new adjacent without apology. The smell of it, which was the layered smell of a port city, salt and diesel and something frying and flowers, that I would learn were everywhere in Cebu in April. The specific sweet, heavy smell of blossoms that I had no reference for and that I would subsequently learn to identify, and that I associate now entirely with the feeling of arriving somewhere that turned out to be the right place. The guest house was in a part of Cebu called La Hug, which is a neighborhood of some residential density near the university, and that had, at the street level, the quality of a place that people actually lived in, rather than a place designed for people to visit. The guest house was run by a woman named Ate Beth, who was 67, and who opened the gate when Dodong's vehicle pulled up, and who looked at me getting out with the direct, honest assessment of a woman who has been running a guest house for a long time, and who forms accurate opinions quickly. She said, "You look tired." I said I had been traveling. She said, "Not that kind of tired." She took my bag from me, the smaller one, with the firmness of someone for whom possession of the bag is not open to discussion. "Come, room first, then eat, then sleep. Tomorrow everything is manageable. Tonight, just sleep."